Everyone. Welcome to Coffee Conversations. My name is Megan Ellsworth, the host here at rooferscoffeeshop.com. And I'm so excited because today we have Trent Cotney from Adams and Reese. And Adams and Reese is also the sponsor of today's episode. So thank you, Adams and Reese. Trent, for the very few that don't know who the heck you are, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So Trent Cotney, I am a partner and construction team leader at Adams and Reese, which is a national law firm. But I'm also heavily involved in the roofing industry. I serve as general counsel for NRCA and probably a dozen or so other roofing associations, and love the industry. Looking forward to today's conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is going to be a really fabulous power hour we have here. So I'm going to stop share and we're just going to get to the topics.
Yeah. Cool.
So, Trent, what are some policies and economic issues that are having a big impact on contractors right now that you see?
Yeah, it's been a very volatile last, year and a quarter. There's just a lot going on, and contractors are kind of operating in sort of this intersection of regulatory pressure and economic volatility, right? On the policy side, there's a lot of different things that have affected the industry. Everything from tariffs to uncertainty as it relates to OSHA. There's been some suggestions of deregulation, but you're getting mixed messages to a lot of state level issues that have impacted what roofers do on a day-to-day basis. Not to mention, and I'm sure we'll be talking about the immigration compliance and other issues like that. Economically, we've got a bag of mixed messages, right? We're at an all-time high in the market.
Right.
We're seeing some prices go down, but there's still concern over interest rates, and I can tell you there's just a lot of volatility and instability. And I was having this conversation the other day with someone. It's uncertainty creates negative economic feelings, even
Yeah.
if the metrics suggest otherwise. So
Yep.
that's been some of the issues that I think contractors are kind of having to deal with now as we get into 2026.
Yeah, that is so true. And man, am I sick of the word uncertainty.
Mhm.
But I think we don't have time to be sick of it. It's going to be here for a while, it seems. Um, so, how are you seeing some of the current immigration policies affecting roofing labor, workforce stability, and how are you, helping contractors that come to you with questions and all that jazz?
Yeah, by far, the number one question that I'm getting since January of last year has been immigration and workforce related, right?
Yeah,
We've seen a huge uptick in ICE raids
yeah,
on both home offices and job sites. And it's not contractor specific, right? We've had several instances of manufacturing plants,
yep,
distributors, right? It's affects all parts of the industry. The other thing that we've seen is a big uptick in I-9 audits, where the government will come in, they'll issue a notice of inspection, they'll ask to see your I-9s, and then as a result of that, you could be subject to fines if they're not correct. But more importantly, they run the information and determine whether or not you have legal workers, and you could potentially lose workers as a result. So, we have dozens upon dozens of contractors that are currently in the process of defending I-9 audits. At the same time, there's a lot of concern among contractors about how to help their employees and crews. So one of the things that, we're having to advise on is, make sure everyone knows your rights. The goal is always, tell the truth and cooperate, but you have to know and assert your rights, right?
yeah,
You got the right to remain silent. You got the right to counsel, all those types of things. And part of it is helping your employees in that manner. What's frustrating now is that we've got almost a zero tolerance policy as it relates to immigration, but there isn't a clear cut way to bring workers in that makes common sense, right? The H-2B visa process is flawed, even though caps are more than what they used to be. It's still seasonal and it still requires at least 6 months lead time to kind of figure it out. Very bureaucratic. And I spoke to multiple contractors that have tried to do, employer sponsorship, but they may be in year two or year three of that process. It's just overly cumbersome.
wow,
And one of the things I think we need is some streamlined immigration reform to allow workers to come in. We don't want criminals, but we want people that can come in, work, be taxed, be tracked, have metrics to understand how many we need. And I think that ultimately is going. I think we stand a better chance now to obtain that kind of reform than we ever have in the past because
Okay.
the constituents for the congressmen and women out there are rising up. Right, it's causing pain, and
Yep.
that increased pain may ultimately lead to some change, or at least that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and so I know roofing day, I'm skipping around on our questions here. I know roofing day is coming up. Is
Mhm.
that one of the topics that will be brought to Congress from our roofing day people?
Yeah, I know, Dwayne and the brilliant folks over at NRCA are in the process of coming up with the final,
Okay.
categories of things to advocate for, but I'd be surprised if immigration reform isn't part of that.
Yeah.
I know it's top of mind. I've been reaching out separately to, my senators, my congressmen, to say, hey, we need help. And I encourage everybody to do that in addition to going to Roofing Day, which I think is April, what is it, 15,
April
16?
14th, 15th, I
14,
believe.
15. That was close. Yeah.
You are.
Um, Definitely encourage everybody to go to that. I've been, many, many years, and it's a great opportunity to kind of see how DC really works. You're there with other people that care. And if it was ever, this is the most important time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We have real advocacy issues that are economically impacting and affecting our livelihood. Okay. Not that
Yeah.
we haven't had them in the past, but I think now more than ever is the time where it's important that your voice is heard. One of the issues that I've seen, Megan, kind of talking in DC is there's just they don't understand what we do, right? They don't
Yeah.
understand. They think roofers are just some guy in a pickup truck, right? They don't understand that, even the roof over their head was put on by, a professional roofing company. And part of the reason why it's so important, especially on this immigration issue, is they've got to see a person. They got to understand the story, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why we have to go this year is because there is a misunderstanding of what our industry is, and
Yeah.
I think it's key this year. So.
Yeah. Oh my God. It really, really, really is. And just so everyone knows, also, thanks to Elevate, the coffee shops, we're doing a giveaway to win a free trip to attend Roofing Day, get your voice heard. More information on that is on the website, rooferscoffeeshop.com. You can find it really easy right on the homepage. Just all you have to do to win is write a little blurb on why you think it's important to go to Roofing Day in English or in Spanish. And we want to send people to Roofing Day. So thank you, Elevate, for sponsoring that with us. Trent, how is the economy kind of shaping demand, pricing, and planning for contractors this year? What are you kind of seeing moving forward?
Yeah, 2025, if you look at that, it was an uneven year, right? I mean, I'll talk about both commercial and residential. In the commercial sector, I think demand was inflated by data center construction. There are certain contractors and certain manufacturers that really benefited from data center, and I think it skewed it significantly. So the demand that you saw in 2025 for commercial, I think, is inflated based on that data center construction. I anticipate that will continue in 2026, but at some point that's going to phase out, or they'll figure out a smaller footprint, or the computing systems will evolve to quantum where you don't need the amount of room that you might need now, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But for the foreseeable future, that's what it is. And the residential side, um, there was, a pretty good downturn in most areas. And one of the reasons I think that is lack of storms, right? There were
Right.
no hurricanes this year, no name storms that really impacted the U.S. There were some pockets of hail here and there. I was talking to the folks in Cincinnati, and they said they had some pretty good storms that allowed them to get some work last year. But overall, I think the storm and restoration market was weak. That, coupled with insurance reform, is having a direct impact on residential roofing contractors.
Yeah.
I think in the next few years, you will not see the same level of pricing and the same level of insurance involvement in roof replacement.
Wow.
Insurance companies have been very active in lobbying for reform. I've seen it firsthand. Florida is the epicenter for that.
Right.
I live here, so I see it daily. And I think a lot of the changes and impacts that have occurred here in Florida will spread out to Texas and North Carolina and Colorado and other really strong storm markets. So you can anticipate that there's going to be a move closer to retail or a hybrid type model and a move away from, the typical contingency storm insurance type contract.
Got it. So for those out there that may not know like what exactly the insurance reform what is happening in Florida, could you kind of give just like
Sure.
a quick synopsis of like what's
Yeah.
going on and what's coming out of Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the last 4 years or so, maybe five, there's been a series of at least 4 or 5 special sessions or legislative sessions where significant insurance reform has taken place. So the reform consists of elimination of assignment of benefits, which was one of the
Mm,
key ways that contractors were able to, try to get paid. Typically, they would hire a first party lawyer to sue an insurance company and try to obtain that money, so that was a big part of the model. They eliminated the capability to get attorney's fees in most cases against insurance companies, which again kind of pushed that model down. They have some very restrictive advertising and marketing. A lot of notices are required, even on door hangers, that kind of stuff. Some restrictive contract provisions. Governor DeSantis also set up a specific roofing task force to look for fraud and to go after bad actors.
hmm,
That coupled with the fact that Florida requires that even if you hire a sub, that sub must be licensed. It is a very difficult area to work if you're doing storm and insurance and you're trying to do it the right way. Those reforms have curtailed some of the issues, but the real reason that all those reforms are happening is, I can speak in personal experience. My homeowner's insurance doubled last year and went up 50% this year. So
wow.
pretty soon you're pricing yourself out of the market and you're just self-insuring.
Yeah,
So, and we've had a ton of insurance companies leave the state. So it's a
right.
very, the governor and the state Congress is very favorable to any kind of insurance reform that's going to keep insurance happy, keep them here.
Okay.
And the insurance lobby is obviously using Florida as sort of a test market, in my opinion.
Got it. Wow. Oh my gosh. So we have a question from Lily Tillman
Sure.
Smith. Hey, Lily. Um, how are roofers going to handle working with homeowners to pay for roof repairs, replacements when insurance no longer plays more of a role?
Yeah, I mean, it's the homeowners can still make an insurance claim, right?
Okay, yeah.
There's nothing
Right.
that's going. And I will say that I've seen at least two policyholders look to two insurers look to carve out hail from their policies, right? So insurers are smart, and if they're losing money, they're going to look to kind of do that. So the retail market is alive and well, right? And if you need a new roof, there's a variety of ways that you can work with a homeowner. They can submit an insurance claim, but they're still ultimately liable to pay you. And the insurance doesn't pay. They can look to financing. They can look to a lot of ways. I would say that the Florida market, for example, I would say retail is probably dominant, right?
Yeah.
There is insurance and storm, but retail tends to be the primary model. So I don't think that insurance is going to go away. I think there will always be insurance, but I think the current model of contingency type arrangements with, pricing that is, I think the models are going to change, and I'm already starting to see it. It will be here for a while, but ultimately, I think a smart move is to start entering the retail realm or creating a hybrid model where you look to insurance first, but ultimately the homeowner is liable for payment.
Got it. Got it. Wow. Okay, so we have another question slash comment here from Phil.
Mhm.
Short of joining the various construction related organizations who are already pressuring Congress to ease up on severe immigration enforcement, how can those in the roofing industry get the attention of the right politicians? Do any of the
Yeah.
professional organizations offer petitions that non members can electronically sign to be sent to those politicians? There is strength in numbers. I just don't know if pleas from individuals are even read.
Yeah, so I'll address that in a couple of different ways. One is it's important to get to look to know your local, representative and senator, right? And oftentimes you won't be speaking to them, but recognize the politicians aren't really the ones that are doing the work. It's the legislative aides, right?
Right,
It's the chief of
exactly.
staff, it's the legislative aides. When I want to get something done, I am not emailing or contacting representative or senator. I'm contacting the chief of staff or legislative aide.
Got it.
And you'll be surprised, when you go, you might get in front of, somebody that just came out of school, but they're the ones that are doing the work, right? They're the ones
Hmm.
that are teeing it up for the politicians. So part of what I want you to do is get to know whoever your local rep is, federal level, right? Not state, because immigration is federal, right?
Got it.
And I would go and I would talk to them about the real world impact. And I would think about what to say. I know NRCA and other organizations have some great talking points to address your other thing. I think it's worth reaching out to any association you belong to, whether it's a state, regional, or NRCA, to say, hey, how can I help? What can I do? And it could be everything from participating in something like roofing day to contributing. NRCA has a roof pack. There are a lot of different ways that you can do it. I will say that on the state level, if you are in a state that has, certain immigration enforcement that goes hand in hand with federal, it might also be worth talking to your state representatives or senators, just to say, hey, this is an issue. Can we look to address this in a different way? But ultimately, keep in mind, immigration is a federal issue.
Right. Okay. So, are there any other key issues you think the industry will be bringing to lawmakers in Washington during Roofing Day besides immigration and insurance? Anything else people should be aware of?
I think NRCA did a fantastic job of getting a lot of the tax reforms done. So,
That's right.
I don't know whether or not there'll be any tax related issues. I anticipate there'll probably be some regulatory issues
Hmm.
that may be on the table. I know Dwayne Musser and the other great people in the lobbying arm of NRCA work very closely with staff to kind of determine what are the two or three issues that we should focus on. And typically, just so you guys know, if you've never been to Roofing Day, the goal is to have a consistent message, right? You don't go and you don't start talking about, how ICE, harassed you in Wyoming or something, right? You focus on the message, right? You focus on what the message is. You're consistent with that message. And the goal is to have each and every one of us say the same message to all the members of Congress, right? So they'll come up with two or three good talking points, and you stay on script. And the reason you do that is because you want to focus that message, right? If you have your own issues, you're welcome to schedule other meetings or figure out something else to do, right?
Got it.
But I anticipate there'll probably be some regulatory things on there. We've gained a little bit in career and technical education, but I think there's probably some more opportunity there as well. I
Yeah.
liked kind of what I saw out of the last round. I think there's some incentives there that are kind of put in place, and I like that. But I would like to see more there. Personally, I can't speak for what the issues are. Personally, I would like some regulatory clarity that would help me out. Both from DOL and OSHA, which tend to be executive agency action rather than legislative, but there is
Mm,
legislative component, on the Labor and Ed Committee that often provides input there. Infrastructure investment and
yeah.
disaster type stuff. I'd like to see that because it does impact roofing to a certain extent. Those are just a handful of things, but in my mind, immigration is top of mind. It is absolutely our. I think the biggest push needs to be a streamlined way to get workers here legally. That
Yeah.
needs to be it. And there's several things. There's a Dignity Act, and there's some other suggestions that are out there. Ultimately, I anticipate it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle of what's being suggested, but um, I don't know how as an industry we can continue at this pace if it stays at this pace, you know, for a prolonged period. And the reason I say that is because, our workforce is a zero sum game. Until robots come along, there's not a domestic workforce that's going to take that over. So what you're facing is for every crew member that leaves, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, right? We've had crew members, I've had friends of mine that have said, look, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid for me. I'm afraid for my family. To the extent, even if you are 100% e-verify and know for certain that everybody that works for you is a U.S. citizen, my concern is labor rates are going to tick up, right? Because if you have workforce leave, it's a zero sum game. You're not going to replace that workforce. I think we saw the stats, if I remember right. I think there was like a 14% increase year over year in some areas. So my concern is that's only going to tick up more.
Yeah.
We need some immediate relief there, in my opinion.
Yeah. We absolutely do. And I think to answer your question, Phil, also, I mean, Roofing Day really is an incredible opportunity to make palpable, tangible change within the industry. So I really urge you, Phil, to try to win that trip to Roofing Day, sponsored by Elevate, from Roofers Coffee Shop. And it looks like MCA is also giving away two free passes to Roofing Day as well. So there's information in the chat on that. Thank you, Peggy, for putting that in there. Okay, to pivot a little bit, where is AI in all of this, and where is AI already making a real impact in roofing operations that you've seen?
Yeah, it's transformative. I've seen it firsthand. I've had the opportunity to kind of test run some things and see some things, and I can tell you, it first started off. The initial use of AI was customer service and marketing, right?
Yep.
And that's great. Saves you some time, may save you money, but where AI is really transforming the industry is in estimating, material management, scheduling, forecasting, job costing. That's where it's giving you a competitive advantage. So I had the opportunity to see some scheduling software that used AI, and what it did is it looked at the efficiency of each crew member on each crew with each system and determined based on the schedule for the next, for all their backlog, how they would get the most efficiency out of each crew and which members
Wow.
should be on that crew. And then if for some reason a project is suspended or leaves, it automatically fixes that. So the amount of efficiency that you are gaining on that equals money, right? And
Wow.
if you don't have that, then you can't adequately compete, against someone that does. The other thing is I've seen it on the material inventory side. It actively looks for issues that are out there, whether it's tariffs or material unavailability, and will send alerts saying, hey, based on this, we believe you should order, X number of widgets today because, it looks like tariffs are going to hit, based on what we're seeing, or, historically you need more of this at this time. We recommend, this is an all-time low, recommend, and it gives you real-time working, suggestions that can help you save money. And then again, in the estimating side of things, we're seeing it combined with, drone inspections, pictometry, other aerial type, overviews, and giving you a pretty good idea of what you need to do. It's really transforming, and it's helping issue spot. That's kind of the real thing. One of the things I'm sure we'll talk about is, what are the potential issues. You have to be careful. You got to trust but verify. But those are some of the things that I'm
Right.
kind of seeing, is that it's transforming the operational side of roofing. Yes, it has a huge impact with customer service and marketing and AI agents and all that kind of stuff. But where I think it is creating a competitive advantage is in that operational area.
Yeah, I mean that's huge. That seems massive. And I mean, for everyone that went to IRE just a few weeks ago, so many new AI companies were on the floor, and you can find more information on all of that on our YouTube channel. We did a lot of interviews from the floor, from our soundstage with new AI companies that have been around a long time, and so definitely go to our YouTube channel to check that out. But so we have a question here. What is the impact of AI on roofing design and specifications for consultants and architects? Are you seeing anything in that realm?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing AI used with BIM and other type of
Okay.
models in advance to kind of determine what's most efficient. It truly is value engineering. I always say value engineering was kind of an oxymoron, but now it's real because it gives you
Yeah.
the opportunity to really test a design issue spot. That's why I like AI, is because it can say, hey, here's a potential design, go through it, tell me where do you see any issues, right? And some of it may be nonsense, but there may be one nugget in there where you're like, this is something that we might want to redesign, right? I also
Mm,
think it's streamlining the RFI, RFC type process, the request for information, request for clarification. I think it makes it easier to um, respond and figure out what areas need to be addressed on the site. All of that leads to efficiency, and optimally, it leads to less disputes. Nobody likes lawyers, myself included, except for good folks at Adams and Reese, in case you're listening. But the goal is to be efficient and resolve any kind of dispute as quickly as possible. Typically, with
yeah,
design, if someone is questioning a design issue, it could lead to a potential dispute. So the goal is figure it out in advance if you can. During the project, use it to help streamline responses and get, again, you always have to trust but verify,
right.
right? You always have to review and put your seal of approval on it, but it can really help, cut through a lot of the BS. And I think that's going to save money and reduce disputes.
Yeah. How does how do you think AI could potentially help contractors manage some of this labor shortage and economic pressure? Is there like I guess with office staff, but maybe on the roof too?
Yeah, yeah. So I think in a labor constrained market, which is what we have now, efficiency is leverage, right?
Right.
So if AI helps you complete jobs faster with fewer errors, then you're going to offset whatever inflation or that kind of stuff that you're going to see. I think it
Yeah.
increases capacity without necessarily increasing headcount.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we have to do. I've always, in past, conversations, I think I've said this before. Anytime that you have such a difference between supply and demand, like we do in labor, technology is going to fill that gap,
Yeah.
right? And right now it's AI. Pretty soon it will be AI and automation and robots, right? But right now AI is that gap, and it is those that are using it are realizing I can save money, I can be quicker, faster, I can get turn around the bids quicker. I can do all these types of things that in the past it was all manual, right? So
Yeah.
I think it increases automation and helps reduce overall overhead.
Okay, so now here's the elephant in the room. What should contractors be cautious about when adopting AI? I know you've said trust but verify a couple times.
Yep.
What should they be looking out for?
Yeah. So really three key buckets. I'd say accuracy is one, um, compliance, and then risk. Um, so typically, right now, as AI works, bad data in, bad data out. So AI is a lot like a golden retriever; it wants to please, but it will provide false answers or false narratives, and
Right.
that it'll come up with stuff that sounds absolutely brilliant, but you can't rely on it, right? Great example of that is in my profession. I can think of at least three cases where lawyers used AI and it came up with false citations, and subsequently those lawyers were sanctioned, right? So, for my purposes, I'm not relying on it for anything, right? I have to make sure ultimately if my name's going on something, I got to make sure that it's 100% accurate, right?
Right.
So I would definitely say that with regard to estimating or with any of that stuff, it is a great tool, right? It can help get you to 85% of the way, but you have to independently verify everything, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it. The second bucket I think is legal compliance. Recognize that I can obtain all of your search results on ChatGPT, even the ones that you deleted with a subpoena. And I have done that before. Not to roofing contractors because I only represent the righteous, but it is very easy to do. All of that is publicly discoverable. And there's a risk that if you upload confidential information or customer information, that it can be obtained by someone that shouldn't have access to it. So you should be very careful about confidentiality, proprietary information. You should have an AI policy in your employee manual that talks about how employees can use it, right? So anything from a marketing perspective should be blessed by somebody before it goes out. Customer important information shouldn't be uploaded. There are certain systems that allow you to have sort of a walled AI system to help, protect confidentiality, but that's obviously a big issue. You also have to be careful about bias. I've seen some issues there. So I think the best thing you can do from a compliance standpoint is put up some guardrails about its usage, make sure that everybody is using it responsibly, and also recognize that if there's a dispute and you're using it, bad guy lawyers will get it from you. Okay. And then, the other thing is contractual risk. I have a lot of contractors say, well, Trent, can I just use AI to review a contract? And the answer is yeah, you can absolutely do that. And it will do a great job again of about 85% of what's there. The problem is use it as a tool. Don't use it as definitive. You still have to
Yep.
put eyes on it because it won't issue spot things that aren't necessarily there, right? If it'll issue spot what you put in front of it, but it doesn't understand the holistic picture. So down the road, if we have generative AI, then yeah, it's going to do everything. I'll be out of job. A lot of other people will too. But right now, as it stands, it's a tool, and that's how I would look at it. You always have to make sure you're putting eyes on it before final product goes out. One other thing I'll mention, Megan,
Yeah.
is sales in your slide deck or pitch deck that you give to customers. I've had one that's ended up in litigation. The other one was just a threat.
Wow.
They used AI for purposes of creating what a finished product would look like. And the condo association in this case said this is not what was promised. This was a misrepresentation and based allegations off of that. So
Wow.
typically, one of the things I recommend is an AI disclaimer that says, this is for promotional purposes only until we put boots on the ground and take a look at it. You can't rely on this, all that kind of stuff if you're using it for promotional or sales material.
Wow. Wow. I think also, just to touch on that, I mean, everyone watched the Super Bowl, right? All the AI commercials. And there is something to be said about keeping that human element, using AI, like you said, as a tool. But keeping that human element, people, I don't think homeowners really want to just be handed like an AI created sales pitch deck.
Mhm.
They want to keep that human element. And so I think there's so many contractors that also want to continue to keep that human element. So keeping that, but also capitalizing on the efficiency that it can give your company is really important, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. I think, look, if you're using AI for sales, great. If it's a numbers game, yeah, you're gonna catch some. But we still live in an industry where face-to-face communication is important, right? I mean,
Right.
that's why you're on the road all the time. That's why I'm on the road all the time. It's because, I can sit behind a desk and talk until I'm blue in the face, but when I can see somebody's emotion, when I can understand what they're going through, when I can really hear what the issues are, not just read them in an email,
Yeah.
it gives me so much better capability to understand how to address them, right? And I think the same holds true when you're dealing with a customer is that face-to-face communication, it's hard to replace it.
Hmm.
It's finding a good, middle ground. I think AI is important because it helps fill the gaps where you can't have bodies out, 24/7,
Exactly.
but that human element is still important.
Exactly. I love what you said. It fills the gaps, because we don't want to be working more than 9 to 5. Honestly,
Right.
we don't want to be answering an emergency roofing call at 2 in the morning. AI can do that, and then when we get into the office, we can handle it then. So that's
Mhm.
so true. It fills in the gaps. Trust but verify. Great advice there, Trent. So I would love if you could give contractors kind of one strategic priority for this year. It's still kind of early in 2026.
Yeah.
What should they be doing this year to kind of better themselves, better the business, better the industry?
Yeah. So I I love the advocacy part. Like I'll
Yeah.
just be honest with you and the audience. I wouldn't be a lawyer if it wasn't for the roofing industry. Like
Oh,
I love being able to educate. I love being able to speak. It's what gets me out of bed. I'm passionate about it, right?
mm-hmm.
And one of the things I've seen over the years is almost every single legal issue that a roofing contractor has, there's really an operational failure somewhere that
Got it.
that could have been resolved. So what I want our contractors to do is look at how to be proactive rather than reactive, right? I don't want anybody to ever get sued. That's a dumb thing for a lawyer to say, but um, there are things that I'll give you some examples, right? If you get an OSHA fine, I guarantee there's something that you could have done better from a safety perspective. And there's probably something you could have done better from a risk mitigation perspective on how to deal with OSHA when they show up to a job site, right?
Right.
If you have a customer issue, there's probably something you could have done better operationally to vet that customer and not even have them in the first place. My dad always told me it's the customers you don't take that make you successful. But there's probably some better contract provisions that you could have that you could fall back on in the event that you can't resolve whatever the issues are. If you got an employee problem, again, there's probably a better way you could have handled that, or an employee policy or procedure you could fall back on in the event that there's an issue. So one of the things I'd recommend is really shoring up your policies, procedures, how you operate, look at your contracts, that kind of thing, because I think that's going to save you money. And oftentimes the difference between that top line sales and that bottom line net is the money that you're throwing away on lawyers and OSHA fines and all that kind of stuff, right? So I
Right.
think it would save you money in the long term. Now, if you were like me, look, I'm a business owner, was a business owner, have my own firm, all that kind of stuff. When you first start off, all you're doing is trying to keep the lights on and make payroll, right? So
Right.
you don't have a lot of time to cross your T's and dot your I's. But the bigger you get, the more you need to focus on that risk mitigation element. I think it's the kind of thing that I think is going to save you money and help you sleep a little better at night. I've talked to so many contractors that have said it's the things that I don't know that cause me to wake up in the morning, right? Or early, too early, right?
Yeah.
I think part of that is just taking the time now, for those of our listeners that are still in the winter months and can't do work right now, use that time to figure out where can you shore up, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'd recommend.
Yeah. And what are some resources you can kind of point people to, you know, s- upskill their employees, to upskill
Yeah.
themselves, to be able to shore up some of those gaps?
Yeah, obviously I'm a big advocate of associations.
Always.
NRCA's got some great training, whether it's track or pro cert or whatever it might be. I think there's some great opportunities to increase professionalism. I know a lot of the other associations, Western states have RSA, CRCA, RCAW, and go on and on and on. All the associations that I belong to have a tremendous wealth of knowledge and resources. Not to mention, just this week I attended two meetings with HARCA and NTRCA where this is part of their monthly lunch and learns, right? It's invaluable to be able to go to those lunch and learns because not only are you learning about topics, but you're having the capability to really network and have other people kind of tell you, hey, this is what I'm seeing, right?
Yeah.
So I encourage everybody to get involved. It's how I kind of keep my thumb on the pulse, right? I wouldn't be able to really understand what's going on out there if I wasn't involved in associations. I really think that not only is it the external voice of our industry, but it really helps you understand what you should be looking out for. So that would be my suggestion. And then
Yeah.
obviously go to Roofer's Coffee Shop because that's where I get my news from. So
Aww. Okay, so we have a question here. Are you seeing more contractors walk away from certain types of projects because of risk?
yeah, I think the smart ones are. I think there's this tendency when times are bad to take whatever's on the street, and that's the wrong thing to do. Because one of the things I always say, regardless of whether you're residential or commercial, is know your customer.
Yeah.
We live in a world where you can find anything about anyone with a click of a button.
Yeah.
So why
Ooh.
wouldn't you search the official records and the court records for the county where that customer is and figure out, do they sue contractors? Are they in foreclosure? Do they
Wow.
pay their
Yeah.
bills? Look to see if they leave negative reviews. Would you do business with somebody that only leaves negative reviews? There's a good chance you're not going to make that person happy. So taking time on that front end to make sure that before you sign that proposal that you know who you're dealing with is smart business. So I think the smarter contractors, even when backlog might be down, are turning away those risky projects because they're just going to cause headaches. There's no reason to do work for nothing, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my suggestion is, only take work where there's a chance that you're going to make what your intended profit is. Otherwise, you're rolling the dice.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to encourage everyone in the audience. We still have quite a bit of time. So if you have more questions, please keep them coming. We have one here at Roofing Day. If we attend, how can we explain industry challenges to lawmakers in a way that actually gets their attention?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little background on how Roofing Day works, right? And I've been
Yeah.
to, I think, all of them. I might have missed one, but I think I've been to
Wow.
most of them.
Because they started
Uh,
in 2015? Or,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
So I've been to quite a few of them. And typically, this is what first time attendees should kind of expect. There's going to be a lot of preparation, right? You'll have meetings beforehand. They usually do sort of test runs where they have somebody on stage and they run through the issues. You'll have cheat sheets that kind of explain what the issues are and also allow you to lead those sheets with the person that you talk to in Congress. It's really done with sort of professionalism and purpose. It is streamlined. You will have everything that you need. You don't have to worry about not understanding what to say or how to say. You're briefed on all the issues. You're not walking in unprepared. So it really makes a big impact. And you might not think it does, but being able to interface, NRCA wouldn't have been as successful with the great tax reforms it was able to get had Roofing Day not occurred, in my opinion. I think it's really getting that real world understanding of, hey, this is a constituent. These are, people that are employing a lot of people that are also constituents. They are facing real world issues. I need to listen, right? And I think that's the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Okay, yay, we have another one here. What should I be doing to protect my business if labor suddenly drops mid project due to ice?
Yeah. So one of the things I've gotten this question a bunch, while I've been on the road, and one of the things I suggest is, you can't have a contract provision or something that says that if I lose workers because of ice, you should pay me more money, right? But one of the things you can do is you can talk about it from the standpoint of safety. And I drafted a contract provision somewhere. I can't remember quite. I did it at some point. That basically said, the work site is a controlled access zone. And I'm not using that from a safety terminology perspective. I'm just using it for common sense nomenclature.
Yeah.
And to the extent that the owner um, allows others on that site and it causes damages or delays, you could, submit a claim or a change order pursuant to the terms of the contract. So you're framing it in the terms of safety, not immigration. One of the concerns that I've had on a lot of job sites is, ICE will show up without a warrant, but the owner or the owner's rep gives consent. And I've had entire crews be eliminated, right? Even on commercial jobs. And what do you do at that point? You're midstream, you got an open roof, right? So it really creates a difficult issue. And I think the way to frame it is from a safety standpoint. Because if you frame
Yeah.
it from an immigration standpoint, the defense is going to be, well, you shouldn't hire illegals anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that is how I've kind of navigated and thread the needle.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. What the heck? Okay, we have another question here from Lynn. PE roll ups are now large enough to bypass distributors and buy manufacturers direct. What happens to independent contractors when the distribution tier that gave them access to competitive pricing, credit, and local inventory collapses? Is anyone in the industry advocacy talking about this?
So yeah, PEs, private equity and roll-ups and platforms have been a big issue. And there are 40 or 50 or so that are pretty well known now. Both in the residential space and the commercial space, and in
Yep.
residential, both storm insurance and retail. And there are a lot of great platforms out there. Okay, so there are some platforms that are doing it the right way, that have great operations where the owners of the various companies that were acquired are happy and everything's going great. Okay. On the other end, private equity often has their goal is to show a return to their investors. And they're also having to face, increased interest rates on debt financing. All the transactions that are usually done are done via financing, not cash, right? So they are under a significant amount of pressure to cut cost and show good margins for purposes of returning and the investment that their investors provided. So you're seeing choices being made based off of that. There are some private equity companies that have already pulled out of certain regions. There was a well-known contractor in Minnesota that's made the news. Their lights went off overnight, right? There are other platforms that have failed because maybe they didn't, understand the industry or understand, what to expect. So, consolidation, even though it's top of mind now, is not a new thing. I've seen it happen even in the almost 30 years I've been in the industry before. And I think you see it, across all levels. You're seeing it in distribution, you're seeing it in manufacturers, you're seeing it, with contractors. What you see today might not be what you see 5 years from now, right?
Yeah.
Or even 2 years from now. So I don't think distribution is going away. I don't think, the independent contractor is going away. I think what you're seeing is there will be some large strategic platforms that are out there that are, treating their owners right, that are doing great work, and they will continue to exist. But I think the field will narrow significantly, the more years that go on. So I am not necessarily worried about it too much. I do think that you need to be mindful of the change, right? Distribution should do their best to get out in front of potential platforms and figure out what value add can they add to the new volume, right? I'm seeing it from a consolidation standpoint. I'm seeing everything from same contracts, policies, procedures, same, go-to-market strategies. There's a lot of efficiencies that are being obtained through the platforms that are making them more competitive than independent contractors. So for now, it is definitely a big issue. Like I said, I think platforms will continue to exist. There are some that are very successful and will continue to be. But I do think that you'll see some of those platforms disappear in the next few years.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, we have another question here, and it's kind of along the same line of in the next 3 to 5 years, like you said, will the family owned roofing company still exist?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's still a market for, and I think some of it's size based, right? That there is so much demand out there that I think part of it is, you know, it family-based companies and generational companies often get their business off of referrals and long-time relationships, right? There's something to be said for that. I think if
Yeah.
you're well known, if you've been doing it for a while, if you put out good work, if you've got those great connections, I don't think you're going anywhere, right? I think that yes, there's competition, but there's always competition, right?
Right.
So, and I think definitely in the 10 million under range, I think, a lot of the PE companies are focusing on higher than that. So if you're under that threshold, I don't think that there is too much to necessarily be concerned about at this point. From a commercial standpoint, I do think that bidding becomes a little more complicated. You have to kind of, if you're going up against a platform that may have efficiencies that you don't, obviously you got to take that into account. But I've always been a big believer that, the game is constantly changing. You just tell me what the rules are and I'll figure out how to play it. And that's kind of how I look at
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Um, well, Trent, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. We have
it.
one last question to round it out, but if anyone still has questions, we have about 10 minutes left, so you still have a little bit of time. But to kind of start rounding it out, how do advocacy, workforce policy, and AI kind of come together to strengthen the roofing industry?
Yeah, so it's a big question. Advocacy shapes the regulatory environment, right? And I think as part of that, you've got everything from workforce to OSHA to Department of Labor misclassification rules to all these different things that affect how you do business. Um, Workforce policy helps create stability And if you understand what the issue is, like I said, if you understand the game, you can figure out how to play it. Right now, I think there's just a lot of uncertainty. I've got contractors asking me daily, how do I get somebody in here legally? And the answer, I hate that legally. The answer is, and I'm joking a little bit, but it's a very convoluted bureaucratic method that we have now. As far as AI, I think that's increasing the efficiency and helping eliminate some uncertainty to a certain extent because it's offsetting what's going on outside, right? Um, it I think if we can secure, smart immigration reform, um, and you know regulation where we can understand what the next year is going to look like,
Yeah.
that gives roofing contractors internally, they feel better, they're investing more, they're not holding off on big purchases, and I think that's good for everybody, right? I think
Yeah.
certainty is generally good for the economy, right? And none of this is a political message, it's not a red or a blue message, it's just reality. And
Yeah.
there are changes, and the changes are coming rapidly. I think you've got to be able to combine you know, certainty with smart regulatory reform. And as we get closer to the midterms, uh, I anticipate a couple of things. And one is a lot of the um, stuff that is inflammatory. You're already kind of seeing in Minnesota now may die down because it may not be politically savory. And I will also say that I would be surprised if we don't hit records as far as spending on the midterms on both sides.
Wow.
I think that right now, the way that things are being positioned on both sides is it's a do or die kind of thing. And rarely have I seen this much activity prior to midterms. So I do think that some of the uncertainty will dial down just for political reasons.
Interesting.
At least that's what I'd like to think. But
It would be nice to have a little more certainty and to stop hearing the word uncertainty. It'd be really nice. Well, thank you so much, Trent, for a fabulous coffee conversation today. I just want to thank Adams and Reese again for hosting this and sponsoring a great conversation with you. So thank you, Adams and Reese, and thank you, Trent. This has been amazing.
thank
Um,
you.
I want to share our next coffee conversation is next Thursday with hosted by Jessica Bravo, our Spanish program coordinator. It's going to be in Spanish, our first totally en español coffee conversation, and it's kind of just talking about the state of the industry as well in Spanish, and it's going to be really amazing. So everyone, if you are a Spanish speaker, if you understand Spanish, even if you're not, go register and attend that coffee conversation next Thursday. Give Jessica my love. She is amazing. And everyone out there, thank you for attending today. This has been a fabulous coffee conversation, and we can't thank you enough for your support. Trent, have a great Thursday, and it's almost Friday.
Yeah,
Happy weekend.
yeah. Same to you.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Trent, again. We'll see you next week on the next coffee conversation.
See you guys.
Bye.